Hi, welcome to Chad Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you would mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so feel free to ask questions, leave suggestions for videos, tell me how you do stuff, constructive criticism. All these things are good things to leave in the comment section, so I appreciate those as well. So I don't know why, but I'm in the mood to make kind of a filigree sort of piece. Every once in a while that kind of urge hits me. And so I'm going to do kind of a gothic looking filigree cuff bracelet that's sort of dainty but has a lot of, it's not real filigree, it's going to be 18 gauge wire I think, or 20 gauge, I'm not sure which. So it's not going to be twisted like true filigree, but so we'll call it a faux filigree. But I have a little citrine, and it's got a checkerboard on both sides, the pavilion and the top, so it's kind of an interesting one. It's sort of a cushion cut, and I think it's pretty, and I think it'll make a good centerpiece for this. So we'll get started on that in a minute. Before we do, I'd like to thank some groups of people. First off, my patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and not only have they helped me out financially, they've created this wonderful community over there where I see them helping each other out and sharing their expertise with each other. It's a really nice community, and I appreciate what they've built over there, so thank you for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 15,300 and some, I think. So that's amazing. I can't believe that we've reached that kind of a benchmark, and I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those help with the cost of materials, and I especially appreciate the nice comments that you leave. So it's nice to know when someone lets me know that I've helped them out, so I appreciate that. It makes all this effort worthwhile. All right, well, with those things being said, let's get started on this bracelet. This is one of my design idea books. Current ones, I've started putting some charts on the back, or important information. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeter conversions, which I find useful since I'm trying to use the metric system more. It's also got a nice grid pattern in the background on the pages, which helps me to sketch up my designs, keep things sort of symmetrical. And that's what I did for today's piece. So I don't know what I'm going to call this for sure, but I have this interesting little citrine here. If I can find my little gemstone tweezer thing. It's got that checkerboard kind of cut on both sides, so it's pretty symmetrical in both directions. And so I'm going to bezel set it in the middle of this thing, kind of at a diagonal like that. I think that'll be super pretty. I'm going to be using some 3/16 inch fine silver bezel. That's 26 gauge. That's 4.76 millimeters by, I think it's 0.41 thick, if I remember right. And oh, this stone is 8 millimeters roughly from side to side, but it's kind of a weird cut, so I'm not sure whether to call it a cushion cut or a double checkerboard cut or what. But for the bracelet itself, oh, and I'm going to create a little step for this guy inside of the bezel, probably out of 18 gauge round wire. The other materials I'll need, this outside border is going to be 14 gauge round, and the inside pieces here, I think I'm going to use 18, but I think I'm going to roll it through a rolling mill to flatten it so it's a little bit narrower in one dimension. That'll give it some nice vertical strength too as well. So, because those are going to be kind of holding the setting in place here, so I need it not to distort the bezel too much. Although we're going to have it connected in enough spots to where I don't think it will do too much distortion. We'll see. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I think first let's make a bezel for this guy, and then after that we'll start cutting the. I think I'm going to try and do this in two pieces here. So we'll find the center, we'll make a slight notch in it on either side, bend it slightly, solder it back together so we get this nice kind of pointy curve, and then we'll do the same thing here and here, and then we'll end up lining them up at the base and soldering them here. And then we can start filling in with some filigree, I think, so, or faux filigree if you prefer. All right, grab some bezel and we'll get started on this. They're not quite the right size, so we'll give it a little mark here, just a little bit beyond where they meet. I should have made this last month. The theme that I gave my patrons on Patreon was Gothic stuff, and this is sort of Gothic looking, I think. So every month I give them a different theme to try and make a piece of jewelry to. And participation is not mandatory, it's just kind of a fun thing. Sometimes they produce some really cool stuff. If you've not been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. Looks like that. I use a liquid flux, which I dribble on generally. And my torch is a Silversmith model. It's an air acetylene torch. It draws in atmospheric air through these holes to mix with the acetylene. It's a great torch. I really think it's a good silversmithing torch. And that's most of the questions that I get. I use a #1 tip most of the time as well as I'm melting something. That's pretty good, I think. I'm going to put put a layer of 18 gauge round wire in the bottom of that now. Piece of 18. I tend to cut these just a little bit long and then snip them off until they're just right. But I may have cut this one pretty close. We'll see. I'm going to put one more in there. I'm going to try and get those both tightly in the bottom of that thing. Looks like it's sitting down pretty well. So the easiest way to solder these in that I found is put a few pieces on the pad. Alright, so I'll flux that and then I'll set it on top of those, and then we'll heat it to the point where it should just draw it right up in there. Now I'm just going to file the bottom flat. Yeah, that sits nicely in there. That's kind of what we want. So now we can start working on the band of the bracelet. Like I said, for that I'm going to use 14 gauge round. So from here to here was 165-ish millimeters, or 6 3/8 inches roughly, and that's a pretty normal size bracelet, and so I'm going to try and shoot for kind of that size, but we could, to make sure we get it pretty close, we could take a piece of some other wire like this bezel. Since we got some bends here, we can get it pretty close this way. So about to right here. Use this as a guide for how long a piece is to cut. Okay, now I need to spend a little time straightening these out. And I usually use my flat nose pliers just to hold the wire, and then I use my fingers to straighten it out. I tend to get better results that way. I know there's a lot of different ways that people straighten wire. This is just how I do it. Close enough, probably. I'm going to do the same thing here, so I'm not going to make you watch, but I'll be right back. So I got these pretty straightened out, and I found the center point of each of them, and now I'm going to use the corner of my file here and cut a little bit of a notch right down the center there. I need to go that far through these ones, maybe halfway. And then really what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend them like this to be a relatively sharp bend there. That's not bad. Let's, in order to make this bend permanent, now we're going to solder that closed. One of the things about silver when you're soldering it, even though I'm soldering right there only, you gotta heat the entire piece up to the temperature that the solder flows at, which in this case is 1450 degrees. I'm also going to use something called pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of the pick like this. Oops, missed. Okay, got a little bit on the end of the pick there. And then I'm going to heat this up to the point where it's at that low temperature and just touch it where I want it to go. That just kind of jumps on there. If you're interested in learning how to do that, I'll put a link up there to a good video for you. So now it's mostly going to be doing some bending. That's looking pretty close. I'm going to try and do the same thing with this one. That's not looking too bad. I might solder those together like that. And then it'll make it easier to bend the rest of it. So. Okay, I'm just going to flux it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of solder here and here. Get that soldered together. I'm going to measure these just to see if I'm pretty close on my eyeballing there. Okay, I'm going to make another little notch on the inside of each of these so I can bend it inwards again. So again, we'll use the little sharp edge of my file here. It's going to have to be good enough. I'm going to solder it right here, 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 and here. And then we'll go from there. Is it 100% symmetrical? Probably not. Is it pretty close? Yeah. Good enough. I can see that these aren't exactly the same. I don't care that much. Really. Okay, so that might have been really the hardest part. Now I just have to start putting together filigree in the middle of this. I think I'm going to start on the ends here. You'll notice I've got a swirl that goes like that, a swirl that goes like that, and then just these other kind of dome shapes there. So I'm going to start by making some of those little swirly doodads. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I was going to flatten some of this wire, so I'll be right back. That'll make it much easier. That should make this a little less bulky as far as the profile this way, and allow some finer detail. I almost forgot to do that. Let's try this again now. So I'll be soldering those in like that, and I'll do the other side, and then we'll start adding in pieces. But I'm probably not going to make you watch me do all of it, but we'll solder these two in first, and then I'll start making some components, and you can watch me solder the bulk of them in there. So one of the things about soldering little tiny things to big things is that they both have to reach temperature at about the same time. Much less mass in these things than there is in this, so I got to spend some time getting this piece up to temperature before I even start heating those really. So I'll just keep adding to these things, and then I'll come back and we'll do the center part probably. So I'll be right back. Checking in on some progress. I made these little guys, the little curvy things, and I'm going to pick solder those in now. So let's do that. Alright, I spent a lot of time hunching over when I'm doing this, so I'm going to take a little back break, maybe have some dinner, and I'll come back and finish. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I did a few things, and the main thing that I did was cut some pieces and shape them a little bit, but the first thing I did was I made a little V out of some of this flattened 18 gauge wire. And I did that by filing a notch in it, just like we did on these things, to make it so you could bend it more sharply. And then I soldered those V's in here, and that allowed me to pretty evenly place where the bezel is going to fit in there. And so that's what I did. And I have not yet soldered the bezel in, but I think I'm ready to do that. I have these other pieces cut and shaped, and hopefully I won't get them mixed up in between now and getting them soldered on, because they're probably slightly different from each other. So okay, so I need to pick solder there, and there, and we'll see after dinner whether I can still pick solder. Not sure I got that one. Pretty sure I got that one. So this one, there we go. I think we're good. I thought about doing these as part of this piece over here, but I decided to just do it this way. Don't ask me why. I think I'm going to do two at a time, since these have the potential of tipping over on them. You could curl one of the ends of each of them a little bit, solder them to one side first, uncurl them, and then solder the second side. That would make it less likely for them to tip over, but also requires an extra step, I guess. I have to catch my design idea book on fire. I did that the other day. That one didn't happen. Picked up an extra piece of soldering or something. So now I cut some of these little swirls like this. And I don't know if they'll fit or not. So I think I need to somehow make them a little bit smaller, which may be a little hard to do. I just put little circles in each of those instead. I think that'll look just as good and maybe better than I can do with that. So I'm going to do a slight plan change here. Good enough, I think. Look, before I mess something up, let's solder those in. Okay. Still have quite a bit of solder over here. One thing I tried to do, and I don't know if you could see it when I was doing it, is I tried to put the join on the jump ring here towards the center. That way it'll almost certainly close that up anyway, because there's already some solder in that little area. So that'll probably take care of itself. I'm going to go ahead and solder a couple of these ones in the middle. Now I need to figure out what I'm going to do in here. So let's see if I had drawn up something like these. Which would obviously have to be narrower. I don't know. Let me play with the shapes of these and I'll see what I come up with. I like that. Let's solder those in. That's pretty cool looking so far. I have a little soldering malfunction. That's better. Sometimes you can correct things. That was a close call. So I'm kind of liking that way, with the kind of slanted opening there. But I'm going to put something in there just to see if it improves it, or if I should just leave it that way, because I kind of like that. I don't love any of those, so I think I'm going to leave it like this, because I kind of love this one. So let's just do that, and I'll get that pickled, we'll set that stone, and we'll get it all polished up. Okay, so I've got it all shined up and everything and shaped. I just used my bracelet mandrel to shape this, and I whacked on it for a while with my plastic hammer, and I work hardened it a little bit to make it a little springier. And the last thing is to set this stone. And I've filed the bezel down to about the correct level. And I do this a little different than a lot of people do. But I usually use my chain nose pliers that I've polished up a little bit. The flat part here I use as a bezel pusher. Since this one's going to rock a little bit, I'm going to try and do it a little across from each other first. It's kind of a weird stone, so I just want to make sure it's staying flat when I'm doing this. If I put too much pressure from one side, it may shift it. So once you feel like you have it in there, the last step is going to be burnishing, and I use the rounded outer part of my chain nose pliers to do that. I'm just going to basically push really hard right where the two come together. Work my way all the way around. That's pretty. I think that's kind of what I was shooting for. So I will clean up the top of the bezel with my rotary tool with a little blue fine polishing wheel. And then I'll get some better pictures of it and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the Filigree cuff bracelet. I hope you enjoyed that piece. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and take a moment and check out my channel page. I have getting close to 400 videos. This may be my 400th video. I lose track a little bit. But either way, there's tons of content here. So peruse that for a while, watch a few videos, subscribe to my channel. I'd really love it if you did that. And then check out the video description down below here as well. There's some important links there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out about that community. There's a link to my merch store where you can get one of those nice design idea books that I talked about. And there's a link to my ebook if you want to get that guide to 2023's tutorials. It's kind of a handy way to have access to a whole bunch of information all at once. So thanks again for coming. Take care. Happy silversmithing.